We just have to understand that they're a partner that has its own interests at heart.
Getting North Slope gas to market, an unconquered frontier. Is it possible for the state to partner with the oil industry?
Foreman of the ranch here is the governor.
Governors and Gaslines, a long history. Some take an aggressive approach, others have mastered the art of partnership. So what philosophy is best for Alaska?
Sponsorship for Frontiers with Rhonda McBride is provided by Cook Corporation and Spenard Builders Supply. Alaska, where there are old triumphs, but also new frontiers, with challenges as great as the state itself, but a belief the best is yet to come, bringing you the faces, the places, and the spirit of the last frontier. This is Frontiers with Rhonda McBride.
Welcome to our program. Alaska's efforts to move North Slope gas have been a pipe dream, a frontier that remains unconquered. And many of the governors that have lived in this house have tried their best, but Alaskans are still waiting. Many plans have been hatched in this building, and many have gone nowhere. With a special session underway on a natural gas project, it might be a good idea to take a walk back through time. We're on the third floor, right next to the governor's office. Each of the governors involved in the fight for a gas line believed that he or she had the best idea, knew best how to leverage a deal. So over time, two distinct philosophies emerged. Take Governor Wally Hickel. He had a more adversarial approach. He believed that the governor's job was to ride herd on the industry and act more like a ranch foreman. You like oil development, but not necessarily oil companies.
I like the oil companies, just don't let them be our boss. Don't let them run the show by themselves.
In this conversation I had on public television with the governor about 15 years ago, we heard his "you drill or I will" story, a threat he made when ARCO's chief geologist told him the company was pulling out of Prudhoe Bay after failing to turn up oil.
Governor, what makes you so positive there's oil there? They weren't going to drill. I said, if it's not there, I'll think it there.
ARCO stayed, and eventually it discovered the largest oil and gas field in North America. For some students of history, an important lesson in why a governor needs to take charge.
The CEO, if you will, who will be the one who sort of cracks the whip and says, look, we're the sovereign. We have a duty to make sure that our land is developed.
Other governors like Tony Knowles, Frank Murkowski, and later Sean Parnell believed there needed to be more carrot and less stick. Because after more than 4 decades, the gas on the North Slope was still stranded, still no pipeline to carry it to market.
It helped create the first pipeline.
Knowles was the first to push for partnerships in the industry.
Tony Knowles himself was a former oil field worker, grew up in Oklahoma. He also thought it would be a good idea to promise the industry that we would never change our taxes on them so they could have that kind of certainty.
When ARCO tried to sell its stake on the North Slope, Knowles engineered a deal in which BP would be the buyer. But the Federal Trade Commission moved to prevent what it feared could become a monopoly. And ConocoPhillips wound up with the property. There was also Exxon, which owns the leases to Point Thompson, the largest gas reserve in North America, but the company resisted developing it.
We just have to understand that they're a partner that has its own interests at heart, and we need to make sure that we don't fool ourselves into thinking they are going to protect our interests.
And those interests change based on what's going on in the world. Governor Tony Knowles, Frank Murkowski, Sarah Palin, and Sean Parnell all pursued a gas line to the lower 48. But markets changed again. Thanks to new drilling techniques in the lower 48, there was no need for Alaska gas.
I, Sean Parnell, Governor of Alaska, have signed SB 138 into law.
So the Parnell administration crafted a deal, Senate Bill 138, in which 3 big oil companies and a pipeline builder partnered to develop a liquefied natural gas project to ship gas overseas.
The pipeline is a massive project. It's not something that the state can do on our own. we simply don't have $45 to $65 billion.
We're following the mandate of the bill that
Since his election, Governor Bill Walker has sought to put his own stamp on the project and called a special session to make changes. One of those, a gas reserves tax on undeveloped fields. Supporters say industry tax breaks are too generous as it is.
A lot of carrot and not a whole lot of stick. And so what you see now with Governor Walker is he's applying a little bit of a stick with his reserves tax.
It's a punitive tax. So I think it will have a chilling effect on companies.
Walker's other policy shifts have already raised concern from its partners, BP and ConocoPhillips. But the most outspoken, Rex Tillerson, the head of ExxonMobil, who said, every governor that comes in decides they've got a different way of doing this, which is why it never happens. Alaska is their own worst enemy. The current occupant of this house, Governor Bill Walker, is clearly in the ranch boss camp. We asked him about fears that his approach might set the project back.
They need to do what's best for them, and that's what they're supposed to do, and they do it very well. There are times we work very collaboratively, and what's best for them is good for us, but there are times when it's not.
So in this particular case, we have this comment from Exxon's CEO, Rex Tillerson, who says Alaska's its own worst enemy, and that makes it very hard to get a gas line.
It doesn't help the situation when the CEO of one of our partners is out making statements to an international audience, very condescending about our state. So I was offended by that, not personally, but certainly as a governor of the great state of Alaska, I was very offended by that statement.
Well, some of the Republican majority worry that that was a sign that we may be on the verge of losing a natural gas project. How do you take that?
Yeah, and I think one of the disappointments I have is that people really believe that it can only be built. The only ones who are allowed in the world to build put a piece of pipe in the ground is Exxon, BP, and ConocoPhillips. They're great companies, they really are. But there's pipelines all over the world, that are not done that way. In fact, this is the anomaly. My problem is that we get so wrapped around that we can't move forward without all three. It's sort of the no producer left behind concept, and I don't subscribe to that.
Going into the special session, you have SB 138, which laid out this plan. And some people have said, this was a well laid out plan, a lot of work was put in it. Why can't Governor Walker just take this plan and run with it?
When I ran for governor, I said, I will play the hand I'm dealt, and I will not start over. Every other governor started over again, sometimes a couple of times in our administration. I'm not going to do that. But one thing we don't have that's so critical in 138 is there's no commitment to actually put gas into a project. Pretty critical part of a gas line project is the gas.
When we come back, we'll visit with two longtime observers of governors and gas lines and get their take on what's at stake in this special session.
Wouldn't it be nice to have a little bit of stability in the people that we're trying to partner with?
We'll also hear from a retired BP executive, Al Belay, who believes it's still possible for the state and the industry to have a win-win relationship.
At Spenard Builder Supply, we know it takes a lot of pieces to get the perfect look. That's why we have design centers in every store to personalize the most important rooms in your home. We'll help you select cabinets, countertops, and fixtures that fit your style. So all you have to worry about is, what shade of lipstick goes with that eyeshadow? Spenard Builder Supply. Building for life.
Visit our design experts today and receive 20% off all Kohler special order faucets and fixtures now through October 31st.
The Alaska Native Tribal Health Consortium provides comprehensive health services for Alaska Native and American Indian people across our state. In addition to world-class care at the Alaska Native Medical Center, our work delivers health services for rural Alaska. From cutting-edge technology for the best care possible, to modern construction of clean water systems and health clinics, to health training and outreach that honors our culture, our vision is that Alaska Native people are the healthiest people in the world.
We have a story of 27 families that put 18 months of their lives into building a village, a home for themselves and their future. Our Inupiaq culture goes back thousands of years, carried by a strong sense of community. Our relationship with our natural surroundings is at the heart of our culture. By investing in future generations through development that is balanced with the love of our land, the Coop Corporation brings together traditions of the past with visions of the future.
Good morning, I'm Megan Mazurek.
And I'm James Gaddis.
Well, I came to Alaska to fulfill my dream of finally working on a morning show. It's the one thing I want to do. When I got here, it was just a man and his dog. Now I've got a few more priorities, a few more responsibilities. Life has changed for the best in ways that I never imagined. I knew this would be, one of those trips, one of those life-changing ventures coming up here, but I didn't think it would be anything as fulfilling as this.
As a longtime BP executive, Al Belay watched the pendulum swing between governors and gas lines, but he also experienced it when Governor Sean Parnell appointed him to the Alaska Gasline Development Corporation Board, and then Governor Bill Walker removed him.
I sold everything in Anchorage, and we had a cabin out here.
After Al Belay retired, he decided to build a home in Big Lake on an island.
You can't imagine what it's like out here in the summer.
A short ride by boat.
BP treated me really well.
Belay's ride with BP lasted 24 years. He traveled all over the world and was looking forward to helping the state develop a gas project. Still, he says he doesn't begrudge losing his appointment.
Come on out.
It gives him more time to spend here.
Around the bend is one of the retired generals from J. Bear.
Al Belay enjoys working out of his home, where he writes and thinks about his other passion, leadership. His mission to demystify the process. In a book he co-wrote, he identified some of the steps and says there's a lot to learn from Alaska governors and how each has dealt with the oil industry.
And by the way, it makes no difference if it's a Democrat or a Republican. It's the quality and the willingness, that is, of the administration to engage the industry.
Belay believes those who cultivated partnerships, like Tony Knowles and Sean Parnell, were the most successful.
When it comes to the gas pipeline stuff, he may very well have been the best.
Belay says Parnell stands out because he built bridges between the producers and the legislature that resulted in a bill that laid out a framework for working together on a natural gas project.
When you think about what happened with Senate Bill 138, and a lot of people say, well, that was a really significant moment in Alaska's life. Well, it was. It was a big deal.
Belay says Parnell built trust, which allowed each partner to agree to share the risks.
The thing about trust is it's like rabbits. You get one or two people conveying trust, and you come back the next day, and everybody's trusting. And I mean, that's what I attribute that to Sean. I do. I think he was a catalyst.
He says the ranch bosses are catalysts too, though not always constructive.
You can't whip people into investing money. You can't say, if you don't invest $60 billion, I'm going to take something away from you. That just ends up in a big lawsuit.
There's a feeling that the oil industry has gouged us repeatedly and that they're not to be trusted. It's like an unfaithful husband.
A bunch of stuff happened in the past. We can't change it. It's the past. And are we going to live in the past?
As for Governor Bill Walker,
I have all the confidence in the world that Bill Walker is going to turn this thing around. And it's not going to be by poking the producers in the eye.
But instead, working towards a win-win. For producers, that means having a competitive edge on the world market.
Unbridled, untouched opportunity.
For Alaskans, it's gas for in-state use.
A frontier where you can shape it, you can make it something. That's what's about to happen here.
Maybe. Alaskans have been on this journey for decades. Crystal ball might have helped. The vision of the future so close, but always so far away. Al Belay teaches leadership courses at the University of Alaska Anchorage. Up next, we continue the conversation with analysis from Larry Pursley and Christopher Clark, who have watched governors and many a gas project come and go.
I just want cremation.
Cremation specialists in Alaska.
Can I have a service before cremation?
Our staff is committed to serving your needs.
I just want something basic. The simpler, the better.
Specializing in simple cremations. Whatever your reasons are for choosing cremation, call Cremation Society of Alaska 277-2777 or in the Valley 373-8627 and on the web at alaskacremation.com.
It's not like people are going to come up to you and tell you they're thinking about taking their life. They're feeling alone, they're feeling hopeless, they're feeling lost, unloved.
Those who are suicidal feel alone. Let them know they're not. Ask how they're doing. Check in every day.
I wish I would have called them one more time.
You could save a life. No experience necessary. For support, go to stopsuicidalaska.org.
Radiologist Dr. Christopher Reed always finds a way to get the real-life inside story, while ear, nose, and throat specialist Dr. Stephen Schaefer has brilliant sensory perception. And when you have a bad gut feeling, Dr. Douglas Hagigi has a gift for making things just right. So what do these three outstanding specialists have in common? Anchorage Project Access, because every life matters.
I was really nervous, borderline scared at the starting line at Mount Marathon. And I had done stories about it. I knew the mountain, but these are a whole different breed of runners. These Alaska trail runners, they're serious. To look up and know, oh my gosh, I'm gonna get to the top of that, and that feeling when you get to the top, it's changed my family's lifestyle, because now we're out climbing mountains every weekend. And there's just always somewhere new to go, somewhere else to explore, another mountain to climb.
Well, we have another flash from the past, courtesy of Alaska Public Television. The year was 2006. Candidates for governor in the Republican primary duked it out.
But I also know what it takes to bring together a business deal. And we're about to embark on the greatest significant event since statehood, and that's the gas line.
We are going to build a gas line while I'm governor, and we're going to do that on Alaska's terms, not big oil companies' terms. We won't concede and call that negotiations. Alaska's terms.
I'm sorry that we're running out of time.
Well, we have plenty of time to talk about it here, and the moderator of that debate in 2006 is here with us on the show, Christopher Clark, coming to us from Juneau. Well, Chris, I put that video up there because I wanted people to see that time is ticking away.
And indeed it has, but we're still hopeful down here that something is going to continue to progress. You have to recognize that this isn't just a mega project, it is a giga project, and there's still hope that it is advancing along. Earlier this month, Mark Myers, the Commissioner of the Department of Natural Resources, told APRN that indeed this project is further along than any other gas project in the history of Alaska, and we need to take note of that. It is moving forward inch by inch.
A lot of slow increments. Larry, do you think that we will have a gas line in our lifetime? And, you know, you and I are in our 60s now, so.
Boy, picking the odds right, and I picked the Cubs to make it to the World Series. I think the odds are better than not that in our lifetime we'll see a North Slope gas pipeline in Alaska, yes.
Well, let's take a look at some of the comments made by Rex Tillerson, CEO of Exxon. You know, some people interpreted them to mean that Exxon might be getting cold feet. You know, he talks about having a long history and waiting on Alaska. It's not, you know, Exxon's fault. And then, you know, of course, he says Alaska is their own worst enemy, and that he's basically tired of waiting on governors and their changing policies. What do you think about what Tillerson said?
Well, and I think Tillerson got it some right, some wrong. Yes, every governor that's come in has a different way of getting a gas line, so he's correct in that. That's probably not helpful, but it's just politics, just the way it is. Where he says it's Alaska's fault that this hasn't been built, that's not true. It hasn't been built because the market wasn't there. If for all these years, if you had actually tried to sell Alaska gas in the lower 48 or in Asia, you would have lost money long term. It would have been a bad deal, and that gas has been used to produce more oil at Prudhoe Bay. So it's been in everybody's interest to leave the gas. Now, from the perspective of good reservoir management, as you look at the 2020s and beyond, it's time to take some of the gas off, turn it into a profit. The governor and Rex Tillerson both are of strong opinion, and it doesn't help to have them get into this public fight. But the market knows that we've got our problems here. Tillerson didn't say anything the market doesn't know about Alaska politics.
Well, let's go to Christopher Clark in Juneau and have Chris weigh in on this. How seriously do you think we should take Tillerson's comments?
Oh, I think we should take any of these comments somewhat seriously, but we need to keep in mind that when it comes to putting together a project of this magnitude, more often than not, it's the oil producers themselves that are competing fiercely against each other, and a governor needs to take the role of peacemaker, mediator, almost akin to what Abraham Lincoln did with his own cabinet, famously called Team of Rivals by Doris Kearns. You had a team of rivals that he managed to balance each against the other, and he was able to get things done. And that's what we need here to see. We need to see the governor, be strong for Alaska, but also act as a way to bring the various parties together to move forward.
So what are the odds that Governor Walker will be able to do that? It doesn't seem like he's got a legislature that he's got a strong bond with.
No, the governor's going to work on his bonding with the legislature. But as Chris pointed out, the governor needs to work with the three producers, bring everyone together to get this done. But I think the state needs to be careful not to pick favorites. Look, BP, Exxon, Conoco don't love each other. They don't trust each other. They don't agree on everything. Yes, they've got to work together on this. They're walking in the same direction on this project. They're not holding hands and they're not hugging each other. So the governor, an effective governor, can help them work together, help them keep moving in that direction. But the state's got to be careful not to get in the middle of the fights between those three companies.
Yet, during the hearings in the legislature for Senate Bill 138, the Parnell legislation to put together this deal for the Alaska liquefied natural gas project, the oil company producers, their executives were saying, hey, you and I, the state and the producers, we're not enemies. Really, the enemy is out there in the market, our competitors, so we need to align. And, it doesn't sound like that truly reflects what's going on, sort of a spin there.
Well, yeah, alignment is one of those overused words in Alaska, kind of like incentivize is an overused word.
Well, it's like tax,
I'm not even sure incentivize is a word. But, yeah, we've got to get aligned because the state and the three companies have to figure out collectively what works in the market. I'm not sure I see the market as the enemy, but the market is the reality. It doesn't matter how much Alaskans want this project. It doesn't matter how much the three producers want it, and I do believe the three companies do want to go ahead with this project. It really depends on the market. If the state, working with its partners, can put together a project that competes on price, this will go ahead. If due to politics, if due to market conditions, if they can't keep the costs down, if this project is priced above the market, we're not going to sell the gas. There will be no project. So you're right. We've got to work on cost control, and to do cost control, we got to tone down the politics.
So let's go to Christopher Clark in Juneau. Chris, you put together sort of a to-do list, a checklist, and of course the governor has set the agenda that he wants to tackle 3 issues during this special session. Tell us a little bit about how you think things are going to go forward, because it's not a warm, cozy kumbaya that we're going to see at the start.
Well, I think in terms of the special session, the gas reserves tax is dead on arrival. We may have a lot of hearings on it, but I don't see it going anywhere with this legislature. In regards to the TransCanada buyout, that will be more interesting to watch as legislators rightly wrestle with or try to balance the arguments of the risk versus the cost. Is it worth having to pay TransCanada off now and forego having to pay 7.1% interest along the way? Or is it better to let the project actually get built and then pay off TransCanada via tariffs? And I think that remains to be seen. I really don't know how they are going to weigh in on the governor's proposal. So it's going to very much evolve during the special session on whether to buy out TransCanada.
And I would agree with Chris. If the reserves tax even stays on the special session call, it's not going to pass. I don't even think it'll come to a vote. The governor has said he's working with the 3 producers to try to find some way to pull that reserves tax off. If they can come to an agreement that satisfies the governor's needs and doesn't overcommit the companies to spend money before it's it's time. The TransCanada buyout, I think, will come to a vote. Everyone pretty much knows the facts. As Chris said, you either pay now, pay later. The state has TransCanada in there as a middleman, in effect, putting up their money. We'll pay them later during the operations of the project. But buying them out means writing a check when the state is a little short on cash and has a lot of needs. Both decisions, buying them out or not, both would be right or wrong. It's just going to come down to each individual's legislator's decision, pro and cons, what's the best for Alaska at the moment.
Let's go to Christopher Clark in Juneau for a second. You know, the governor must know, he must be able to count the votes that his reserve tax is dead. So, you know, why is he even bothering with this? It seems like this is going to be a big waste of time.
Well, because he's trying to have some leverage with the producers to support a withdrawal agreement. In other words, that pledge the gas if they choose, one of them chooses to withdraw. The other is many of his supporters like this. Many of his supporters think this is a good approach, that this is how you get a project built, and that it shows that the state is vigorous and strong. So he's very much making a public case as well as a legislative case about why we need to take this approach. So I see that this very much appeals to many in the public, and if nothing else.
Yeah, I think Kritz is right. The idea of a reserves tax is politically popular. It went to a vote of the public in 2006, got defeated, but got a lot of votes. There was a proposal in the Alaska legislature in 2002 for a reserves tax. One of the prime sponsors was Jim Whitaker, who at that time was a legislator from Fairbanks. He's now the chief of staff to the governor. A lot of political support for the reserves tax, but as Al Bollet pointed out earlier, you can't punish someone into making an investment that's bad. So it gets back to the state and the partners need to work on cost control, need to work on the schedule, need to work on the size of the pipe, 42-inch, 48, to figure out what's the best way to get a molecule of gas into the Asian market at a price that someone will buy so we can get it built. Al Bollet also made a good point. There's a lot of animosity in Alaskans against past allegations the companies have cheated us. That's in the past. We cannot negotiate for tomorrow as revenge for the past. We got to figure out something that works.
Okay, well, we're going to continue this conversation on the web. Thank you, Larry Pursley and Christopher Clark. Well, before we leave you, we want to thank Alaska Public Television stations KAKM and KTOO for sharing some of their historical footage with us. It's helped us look back on governors and gas lines, and after decades of trying to get a gas project, well, we're still pushing into that frontier, still talking about when or if it's going to happen. And we want to thank you for being part of our conversation. We'll see you next week.